Jonah Gray had long ago accepted that he was invisible, not the kind of invisibility that came with magic or fairy tales, but the dull, heavy kind that grew from years of being ignored. People stepped around him on the sidewalk, turned their faces when he muttered greetings, and tightened their grips on purses or briefcases if he strayed too close. He lived beneath the old rail trestle at the edge of the city. A cardboard pallet was his mattress, a frayed curtain his blanket. Every morning he emerged before dawn, shaking the damp from his layered coats, rubbing the ache from his joints, and whispering to himself, "Be useful today. That's enough." So Jonah swept, not because anyone asked him to, but because he hated seeing the steps of Sterling Tower littered with cigarette butts and shards of glass. The broom he carried had been rescued from a dumpster, patched with fishing line and duct tape, bristles worn thin but still obedient to his hands. He swept with slow, deliberate strokes, whispering greetings to the pigeons that flapped and cooed nearby. "Move it along, Jonah," the doorman called each morning, not cruelly, but firmly. Jonah always nodded, smiling as if the words were a kindness. Sterling Tower was the tallest building on the block, a gleaming monument of glass and steel. Executives flowed in and out, their shoes polished, their suits sharp enough to slice paper. Jonah watched them from his corner, invisible and unimportant, though he knew their rhythms better than any security guard. He knew when the janitors swapped shifts, when the loading dock received shipments, and when the CEO herself, Nia Sterling, stepped into her private car for her Thursday off-site meetings. Today was Thursday, at 12:30 p.m. sharp. The black sedan slid into place near the service alley. Jonah frowned immediately. The driver was wrong, too stiff, too cautious. His cap looked brand new, not weathered like the usual man's. And when he opened the rear door to check something, Jonah's sharp eyes caught it. A faint smear of transparent glue along the weather strip. He sniffed the air and caught a chemical tang, sweet, sharp, unnatural. Something was wrong. He leaned on his broom, scanning the alley. 10 minutes earlier, 2 men had unloaded a crate stamped with Meridian Logistics. Jonah knew that company. He'd seen its stickers on dumpsters, always near late-night deliveries that didn't add up. The crate had been wheeled into the motor pool. He remembered it. He remembered everything. At 12:40, the elevator opened. 2 guards stepped out first, scanning the alley. Behind them walked Nia Sterling, immaculate in a gray suit that cost more than Jonah would see in a year. Her stride was confident, her eyes sharp, her hand already reaching for the sedan's chrome handle. Jonah's chest tightened. His instincts screamed. "Don't get in the car!" he shouted, voice cracking the air like a whip. The alley froze. Guards whirled, hands twitching toward their jackets. The driver stiffened. Nia halted, her hand hovering inches from the door. "Back up," barked the lead guard, a mountain of a man named Cole. Jonah lifted both palms. "Listen, the seals, there's glue. There's aerosol in the ducts. If she shuts the door, the system vents it into the cabin." "You're insane," someone muttered. Phones rose, recording. Nia's storm-gray eyes fixed on him, curious but cold. "Remove him," she ordered. Jonah's voice dropped, raw and steady. "If I'm wrong, you lose 5 minutes. If I'm right, you lose your life." That hesitation, that single beat of silence changed everything. Cole barked for lockdown. Security swarmed. Bomb squad sirens howled. Yellow tape sealed the alley. A robot rolled beneath the car on stubby wheels. Jonah was cuffed and shoved onto the curb while bystanders laughed. Tin Jonah's gone Hollywood, someone sneered. The bomb squad searched for an hour. They found nothing. No device, no poison, no danger. Just a clean car and a city eager for mockery. False report, an officer said. He's looking at charges. Jonah sagged. His heart pounded like a war drum. Maybe he had been wrong. Maybe. Then Nia Sterling stepped forward. She studied him with surgeon's eyes. Release him. The cuffs clicked open. Jonah rubbed his wrists. You ruined my schedule, Nia said evenly. Why? Jonah swallowed. He could tell her everything he had pieced together from shredded memos and alley whispers, but she would dismiss it. Instead, he chose the hinge, the word that mattered. Crown 9 isn't a cure, he said quietly. Your sister isn't safe. For a heartbeat, her mask cracked. Almost no one knew about Crown 9, the secret clinical trial Arclight bragged about, or about her younger sister's illness. Jonah saw it. The flicker in her eyes, the silent admission that he had touched a nerve. Her composure snapped back like steel. Conference room, she told Cole. He doesn't leave until I've heard him. The room was all glass and stone, perched above the city. Jonah stood at the window, refusing the chairs. Talk, Nia commanded. He told her what he'd seen. Meridian crates arriving at odd hours. Shredded documents pieced together in midnight shelters. Labels marked Phase Epsilon. Words like unexpected markers and suppressed appendices. He didn't understand the science, but he knew when men hid a third column in the ledger. Why warn me? She asked finally. Jonah's voice softened. Because I sweep your steps. And I don't like the people who walk over them dying in cars. Silence stretched. Outside, the city hummed. If you're lying, she said at last, you won't survive it. If you're telling the truth, you may have started a war. I cannot fight in daylight. Jonah gave her a crooked smile. Daylight's your department. I live in the dark. The conference room's glass walls threw sunlight across the table like sharp blades. Jonah sat with his hands folded, aware that the guards saw every twitch as potential trouble. Nia Sterling stood at the head of the table, tablet in her palm, her posture precise as a metronome. Start from the beginning, she said. Jonah's voice was calm, though inside his ribs his heart still drummed. It began with trash. People think shredded paper dies in bins, but paper keeps memories. I tape pieces together when I can. Half sentences, stamped logos, numbers without labels. He told her about the Meridian crates that arrived after midnight, the drivers who looked over their shoulders too often, the labels that read Crown 9 and Phase Epsilon. He described the smell in the sedan, sweet and chemical, and the adhesive on the seals. Smell tells truth, Jonah said. Paper tells truth. People lie in between. Nia listened without expression, but her eyes tracked every word. Finally, she lowered the tablet. You've seen too much. I see what others throw away, Jonah answered simply. Cole shifted beside the door. Ma'am, we should terminate this conversation. He's unstable. Maybe, Nia murmured. She studied Jonah another long moment, then tapped her tablet. Verify Meridian shipments this quarter. Cross-reference with RD, quietly. Yes, ma'am, Cole said, though his mouth tightened. They escorted Jonah not back to the street, but to a small observation room with a single cot, a sink, and a barred window that overlooked the alley. Temporary, one guard muttered, locking the door. Jonah didn't argue. The cot was softer than concrete, and the sink gave him water without waiting for rain. He lay back, staring at the ceiling. Useful, he reminded himself. be useful even here. He began sorting his notebook, pages of neat block letters filled with scraps, license plates, times, names overheard, a map of the city's forgotten corners. He copied what mattered onto a single page, careful to press hard so the pencil left grooves. If they took the book, maybe they would miss the page he could tear free. That night, long after footsteps faded in the corridor, he dreamed of his old workshop years gone, tools neatly hung on pegs, his daughter laughing as she pretended to fix a toaster with a toy wrench. He woke with a wet face and the cold truth that laughter belonged to another life. Morning brought coffee he didn't drink and questions he didn't answer. At noon, Naya herself appeared. She dismissed the guard and stepped inside, holding a slim folder. "Meridian's records are incomplete," she said. "Shipments signed with ghost names. One crate logged, but never inventoried. R. D. denies knowledge of phase Epsilon. And yet," she opened the folder and slid a paper across the table. It was a memo fragment, edges jagged from shredders, words taped into order. Jonah recognized it, one of his reconstructions. "You pieced this together," Naya said. "How?" He smiled faintly. "Patience. Good tape." Her eyes narrowed. "Why keep it? Why not sell it to a reporter?" "Reporters pay for noise," Jonah said. "Noise helps no one. I wanted to give it to someone who could use it, and you chose me." "I sweep your steps," Jonah said softly. "That means I see where your shadow falls." For the first time, a crack of humanity crossed her features, a flicker of exhaustion. She closed the folder. "You realize if you are right, you've walked into something that can erase you without a trace." Jonah shrugged. "I live under a bridge. Erasure is my landlord." That afternoon, Cole returned with grim news. "Ma'am, someone leaked the incident to the press. They're spinning it as a stunt. Homeless conspiracy theorist disrupts CEO." Naya's jaw tightened. "Contain it," Jonah chuckled dryly. "Can't contain fire once people smell smoke." Cole glared. "You think this is funny?" "No," Jonah said. "But I think someone wanted the story out, maybe to bury the real one." Naya's silence confirmed she was thinking the same. 2 nights later, alarms shrieked through Sterling Tower. Guards rushed the corridors. Jonah sat upright on his cot as the door burst open. Cole's face was carved in anger. "Someone tried to breach the 23rd floor lab," he snapped. "Badge access cloned. The intruder got away before we locked it down. Only one thing missing: file servers tied to Crown 9. Naya appeared moments later, her composure thinner than before. She looked at Jonah. "Was this you?" He shook his head. "I don't need servers. Paper talks enough," Cole muttered. "This is too dangerous. He's baiting us." "No," Naya said. Her eyes held Jonah's. "He's a witness. Maybe the only one who doesn't want something from me." By dawn, the press had doubled outside Sterling Tower. Headlines screamed, "CEO under siege, bomb scare fraud, mysterious homeless man in custody." Photos of Jonah in cuffs were everywhere, his face grainy and pitiful. Ana Ortiz, the mother who had once smiled at him in the alley, dropped a paper against the glass of the observation room so he could see the headline. She mouthed, "Be careful." Jonah smiled faintly and mouthed back, "Always." The next day, Naya convened a private meeting in her office. She dismissed everyone but Jonah and Cole. Sunlight fell in long bars across the carpet. "My board thinks I should distance myself from you," she said. "But if what you've shown me is true, Meridian is using my company's name for something darker. Crown 9 may be compromised. She stepped closer, lowering her voice. My sister is still in that trial. Jonah nodded slowly. Then the truth isn't optional. I have soul friend, the Ditumende. For the first time, she seemed to see him not as a vagrant, but as an ally. Help me prove it, she said. Cole exploded. Ma'am, you can't trust him. He's unstable. No, Naya said sharply. He sees what the rest of us miss, and right now, that might be our only advantage. Jonah straightened. His coat was ragged, his hair unkempt, but his eyes burned clear. You want the truth, Miss Sterling? Then let me walk your shadows. That's where the pieces hide. That night he was not returned to his cot. Instead, Cole escorted him to a modest guest room, still sterile compared to the street, but with a real bed and a lamp that hummed faintly. On the desk waited his notebook, placed neatly, as if someone had read it, but returned it whole. Jonah ran his fingers over the cover, whispering, Still useful. He added a line to the last page. Shadows opening. War beginning. Sister at risk. Then he closed his eyes and prepared for morning, when usefulness would no longer mean sweeping steps, but chasing ghosts through the heart of a tower. Jonah had never slept in a real bed without flinching. The springs felt like they might collapse beneath him. The hum of the lamp sounded like interrogation, and the sheets were too clean, too white, too sharp. He spent most of the night staring at the ceiling, repeating to himself the mantra that had carried him for years. Be useful, even in the dark. By morning, Cole collected him with the same expression one might use for carrying trash that wouldn't stop rattling. He said nothing as he led Jonah back to the upper floors. Naya waited in her office. The skyline spread behind her like glass teeth. She dismissed Cole with a flick of her hand. We're being watched, she said. By who? Jonah asked. Everyone, she replied. The board, Meridian, the press, possibly people inside this building I once trusted. I need a second set of eyes. Eyes that don't belong to anyone's payroll. Jonah touched his battered notebook. That's what I've always been. The next hours were spent not in conference rooms, but in corridors. No one toured the archive sublevels, the freight docks, the forgotten mechanical spaces that smelled of rust and ozone. Jonah moved like a shadow, tracing marks on crates, photographing with an old disposable camera Naya had pressed into his hand. She followed close, immaculate even when dust clung to her shoes. Here, Jonah whispered, crouching by a pallet. He scraped away shipping labels until the older sticker beneath showed Meridian Logistics, matched with a serial number that skipped the corporate database. Ghost shipments, Naya murmured. They're hiding something that never exists on paper, Jonah said. But paper remembers. They opened a crate with borrowed tools. Inside were sealed vials of clear liquid, each labeled with the Arclight logo but numbered out of sequence. Jonah lifted one carefully, holding it up to the dim light. The liquid shimmered faintly blue, like trapped electricity. What is it? He asked. Naya's jaw tightened. Not Crown 9. Something else. Something we never approved. A sound echoed footsteps. Cole appeared, arms crossed. This is reckless. If anyone sees you, we'll have more than press problems. Then keep watch, Naya snapped. She slid one vial into her pocket. This is evidence. Cole's eyes narrowed, but he obeyed. Jonah caught the flicker of doubt there, the weight of loyalty strained thin. That night, headlines spread faster. CEO's tower breached again. Mysterious homeless informant at center of scandal. Jonah's face filled screens across the city, sometimes blurred, sometimes cruelly clear. Online forums debated whether he was a visionary whistleblower or a delusional vagrant. Jonah read none of it. He sat in the guest room, copying notes into his book. Crate 17B. Vials marked irregular. Blue liquid. Meridian label beneath false seal. The knock came at midnight. Not Cole, not Naya. A woman he had never seen, slim, sharp-eyed, wearing a staff badge. She closed the door behind her. "You don't know me," she said quickly. "I shouldn't even be here. But what you're digging into, it's real and dangerous." Jonah stayed silent, letting her speak. "They call it phase epsilon," she whispered. "Not a cure, a control. Crown 9 was meant to repair nerve damage, but epsilon rewires behavior. It changes what people fear, what they trust. They're testing it on trial subjects under the guise of treatment." Naya's sister, Jonah thought immediately. The woman pressed a flash drive into his hand. "Files. I copied what I could before they caught on. Hide it. Don't trust anyone." She hesitated. "Not even Sterling." And then she slipped away, leaving only the hum of the lamp and Jonah's racing pulse. Morning brought chaos. The lab tech had vanished. Security claimed she never existed. When Naya confronted Cole, his silence was too careful. Jonah watched the exchange, notebook open in his lap. "They erased her," Jonah said flatly. "Same way they'll erase me if they can." Naya turned on him. "Why give you the drive, not me?" "Because I'm not in the system," Jonah answered. "You are. Easier to trace you than me." She didn't like the answer, but she didn't argue. Instead, she gestured. "Show me." The files painted a picture too dark for corporate spin. Charts of brainwave alterations, notes about compliance response. Patient IDs marked non-viable. Crown 9 wasn't a cure. It was a mask for Epsilon, a project designed to break and bend. Naya's hand shook as she read. "My sister is one of these IDs." Jonah reached for her wrist. She let him, just for a second. "Then you already know what must be done." By afternoon, word reached them. The board had called an emergency session, officially to address operational security failures. Unofficially, Jonah knew it was to decide whether Naya Sterling was still useful to them or a liability. "They'll try to remove you," Jonah said. She nodded. "And if I resist, they'll bury me." "Then we need daylight," Jonah said. "The kind even shadows can't smother." He tapped the flash drive, but Cole interrupted with a warning. "Careful. If you go public without control, they'll twist it. They'll call you a fraud, a manipulator, and him." He jabbed a finger at Jonah. "A lunatic." "Maybe," Jonah said. "But lunatics aren't bought." That night, Jonah returned to his notebook, adding, "Drive, received. Files show Epsilon. Not cure control. Sister at risk. Board circling." He lay back on the bed, hearing sirens outside, the city's restless breathing. For the first time in years, fear pressed against him. Not for himself, he had nothing to lose, but for the girl in the trial, the one who might never know her own thoughts again. Sleep didn't come. He rose, stood by the window, and whispered to the night, "Be useful. Tomorrow we'll ask more." The next morning brought a message slipped beneath his door. No name, only a line, scrawled in rough letters. "They know who you are. Run." Jonah held the paper, heartbeat pounding. For years he had been invisible. Now, suddenly, the wrong people had learned to see him. He tore a page from his notebook and wrote a single line. Target marked, me. Then he tucked the flash drive deep into the spine of the book and waited for the knock he knew was coming. The note lay on Jonah's desk like a blade. They know who you are. Run." He sat for a long time, the city's hum leaking through the window. Run? Where to? The trestle under the rail bridge? The alleys he once swept for scraps? No, he had already stepped out of shadows. Running would only confirm what they wanted. Silence. When Naya entered the room, he showed her the paper. She read it once, eyes narrowing. "The board is moving faster than I thought. Tonight they'll vote. If I don't renounce you, I'm finished." Jonah gave a small smile. "And if you do, you're finished in another way." She exhaled, looking out at the skyline. "They think I can be managed, that I'll choose power over truth. But power without truth is already lost." He tapped the notebook on his lap. "Then daylight it is." They walked together into the conference hall that evening. The room was polished mahogany and glass, every chair filled with money wearing a suit. Cameras streamed the meeting privately for shareholders. Cole stood by the wall, jaw tight, uncertain whose orders he was still following. "Miss Sterling," the chairman intoned, "you've endangered this company with reckless associations. A homeless vagrant cannot be your advisor. The incident has made us a laughingstock." Naya's voice was calm, but iron-threaded each word. "This man saw what your hired experts ignored. He uncovered evidence that Meridian is running a covert project using our name, our facilities to experiment on human subjects." A wave of dismissive laughter circled the table. "Baseless," one director sneered. "Conspiracy fantasies." Jonah rose. His ragged coat looked absurd among their suits, but his voice carried steady. "Paper doesn't lie. People shred it. I taped it back together. Meridian's crates, mislabeled. Vials of liquid not part of Crown 9. Files describing phase epsilon not healing, but control. They've already erased witnesses. They'll erase you next if you stand in their way." "Enough," snapped another director. "This is a circus." Naya slid the flash drive across the table. "Not a circus. Evidence. Independent copies already transmitted to regulators and the press. In 10 minutes, the world will see what's been buried." The room erupted shouts, threats, phones buzzing in pockets. Cole's radio crackled with frantic orders from outside security. Jonah stood motionless, hands folded. For the first time, he wasn't invisible. Every eye in the room burned with rage or fear, but they saw him. When the feed went live, the reaction outside was immediate. News networks lit up with the files. Graphs of altered brainwaves, trial subjects reduced to numbers, notations of non-viable. Commentators shouted. Social feeds exploded. Arclight exposed trended worldwide. Inside, directors scrambled to distance themselves. The chairman slammed his gavel, but the sound was drowned out by the rising storm beyond the walls. "You've doomed us all," one director spat at Naya. "No," she replied. "I've freed us." But freedom came at a price. By nightfall, the tower was under siege, shareholders demanding resignations, regulators swarming, reporters camped at every entrance. Police arrived to investigate, but no one trusted who they served. Cole approached Jonah in the guest room. For once, his voice lacked disdain. "They'll come for you first. You humiliated too many powerful men." Jonah gave a weary smile. "They'll find me where I've always been, but maybe this time someone will care enough to notice." He tore out a page of his notebook, pressing it into Cole's hand. On it were lists of license plates, times, names the trail he had gathered for years. "If I disappear, these live on. Paper remembers." Cole hesitated, then nodded. Naya found Jonah later, sitting by the window. The city outside pulsed with sirens and camera lights. "You could leave," she said softly. Disappear before they strike back. Jonah shook his head. Running makes shadows thicker. I've spent too long being unseen. Let them look at me. Let them remember the broom that swept their steps. She touched his shoulder, the gesture brief but human. You've given me more than evidence. You've given me a mirror. I won't waste it. He opened his notebook and wrote, Daylight reached. Truth spoken. Useful. 2 weeks later, the fallout was everywhere. ArcLight's board fractured. Several directors under investigation. Meridian exposed as a front for covert experiments. Regulators suspended the Crown 9 trial. Families demanded answers. Naya resigned as CEO, not in disgrace but in defiance, vowing to rebuild outside corporate walls. And Jonah? He refused interviews. He turned down offers of shelter, money, prestige. He returned to his trestle with his notebook and his patched broom. But he was no longer invisible. Strangers stopped to thank him. Children waved. People called him Mr. Gray instead of Tin Jonah. The city still had broken steps, broken alleys, broken lives. He swept them slowly, patiently, as he always had. One afternoon, Anna Ortiz's boys found him by the playground. Mr. Jonah, they asked shyly, are you really a hero? Jonah chuckled, eyes creasing. Heroes wear capes. I just wear coats. He tapped his broom. But sometimes a broom is enough to start a storm. He opened his notebook and added the line. Children laughed. Steps clean. War ended. For now. The train thundered across the trestle above, shaking dust down on his shoulders. Jonah tilted his head back, smiling through the grit. For once, he wasn't just surviving in the dark. He was living in the light. And though shadows still prowled the city, they could never fully hide the man who had been invisible, because now the world had learned to see him.